But of course, this hour we are asking, is the BBC biased? Well, overwhelming results in our poll running on Talk Radio's Twitter page right now. 79% of you saying yes, only 21% of you saying no. Keep voting in that poll and we'll bring you the results at the end of the show. We'd also love to hear from you on this as well. 0344 499 1000 is my number. Is the BBC biased? Or you can text me on 87222. Just start your text with the word talk. But the man who has seen this from both sides of the fence is Sir Robbie Gibb. He is, of course, a former BBC staffer, ran the Westminster division, essentially, of the entire Beeb, and also Theresa May's former director of communications at Number 10. Sir Robbie Gibb, thank you so much for being here. Now, you have a fascinating point of view on this, I guess, because, of course, you were a passionate staff member for the BBC and you believe in its existence. However, you have also been a staunch critic of Radio 4 and specifically their flagship programme Today, which has now been banned by the new government. They will no longer put up ministers or representatives from the government to talk on that show. So let's kick off with that. Why do you think the BBC has this intrinsic bias on some of its news programming?
I think it's more complicated than just saying bias right-left. I think in relation to the Today programme, I think some of the concerns from the government is that you put a minister onto a programme, is there going to be an opportunity to set out, without being interrupted and without a ridiculous line of questioning, what the government are actually doing? I think quite a lot of the public, would like to know what's going on, not just what's going wrong. And one of the problems, and it really isn't just a case of Today programme, quite a lot of broadcasters have got to a situation where they see their only role now about holding ministers to account, when that is one of the roles of a programme. It's also about finding out what is going on. And the public elect politicians to do things for them, and often they're never given an opportunity to do that. Just give you one example in relation to Brexit. While I was at Number 10 Downing Street, we spent a lot of time trying to get our message across to the public about what we were doing in relation to the Brexit deal. And I would spend a lot of hours on the phone to broadcasters and newspapers explaining, hoping that they would then relay accurately what we were planning to do and what we were doing. I would go home at the weekend, see friends that weren't involved in politics, and say, Robbie, what's happening on Brexit? And I'd go through, and because there's nothing I like to talk about more than Brexit, and I'd set it all out. We're taking back control of money, borders and laws, and go through the deal. And they says, where can I find that in newspapers and TV and radio? And I sort of hold my hands up, look, we're doing our best. And that's why we ended up, in the end, trying to making statements in Downing Street, speaking directly on social media, not because it was trying to avoid scrutiny. Scrutiny is a very, very important part of politics, but it's trying to find at least some part of broadcasting. I'm grateful I've been going on and on. You've given me a great opportunity to set up my case. But I think that is one of the, even bigger than the right-left issue, I think that concerns ministers.
Well, of course. And look, we hold our hands up here at Talk Radio and say we do want to have opinions. I'm obviously a columnist at the Sun newspaper. I'm proud of my opinions. But at the same time, when I'm paying a license fee, a very, very significant license fee for the BBC, you need to expect and demand impartiality. And it doesn't feel like we get that from the BBC anymore. I mean, in one of the columns that you wrote for the Daily Mail, you actually say that the Today programme is trapped by its own woke groupthink, and that your friends now refer to Radio 4 as radio misery because of its relentlessly negative and snaring tone.
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of, make my point. Being miserable and being sneery is not necessarily left-wing. It's just incredibly tedious. Yes. So it gets back to my point about what's going on. I mean, every single story that is covered on a programme doesn't always have to be, it's a total disaster. One of my criticisms of the Today programme was in their attempt to get more younger voices and more younger engagement. They had outside broadcasts quite often during the week, but at the weekend as well, in university campuses. And shock horror, the opinions of students weren't necessarily the same views on Brexit and a lot of the sort of woke issues that you referred to as the population at large. And my view about the BBC licence, as you mentioned, I'm a supporter of the BBC licence fee, but it can only be justified if it is impartial, it provides something different that other broadcasts and other newspapers don't provide. What are you paying for? Well, I think the public want impartial, at least somewhere in there.
And we're not getting it. And this is one of the reasons why I am campaigning for it to be scrapped, because it's £157.50. Young people don't watch it anymore. I don't want to be forced to fund this news service via a poll tax, which I don't think is fair, because if you were watching it, as you point out, before the election, but not just the most recent election, also the Brexit referendum, you actually would have had no idea of the result. I'm
going to challenge on a couple of those things. Well, firstly, 91% of the public consume BBC output at least once a year. And I want to say something about look, I can see if you're starting from scratch, and I can certainly see ideologically, why would you have a tax-funded broadcaster? There's all kinds of broadcasters where people, broadcast that people don't pay for, like your own and Sky and other things. Well, Sky you do pay via your fee.
But it's a choice.
It is a choice. But one of the interesting things about the licence fee, because it's universal, and you say it's really expensive, it is, I think, is incredibly good value. It costs, here's the killer stat, if I may, is that it costs the same amount for the BBC as it would cost to subscribe to a tabloid newspaper every day. Now, parking, I understand the whole issue about, you have to pay it to consume, but if you can just park that for a second, just in terms of value for money, for that you get BBC One, BBC Two, BBC Three, BBC Four, the news channel, CBBC, the BBC Parliament, I think I might have said that. Okay, actually,
yes, and
TV.
You also get podcasts by Gemma Collins. You get podcasts about the MTV reality show Geordie Shore. You get a website that publishes articles about Love Island. It's strangling the commercial sector.
I don't think that is the case, but I understand. I will concede some of it, but 32 local radio stations, regional, 12 regional centres, I think, and it is a fantastic website for the price of The Sun every day. You work on The Sun. It is just on the issue of good value. I think it is good value. Now, the trouble if you then move from this model to a subscription model, and let's say for the sake of argument, half the number of people who currently pay chose to subscribe, which I don't think is unreasonable, the price for all those people that did subscribe, if you're providing the same service, would double. Now, why is that a good thing? Now, I can understand the philosophical argument, why should you be compelled to pay it? But we are where we are. There's quite a lot of public services, education, health, the police force, and it works. And if you go around the world, anywhere, go to a small village in Africa and say, what do you know about Britain? I've never done this, by the way, but let's just imagine this was the case. They'd probably know a few things about Britain. They would know, that's the Queen, probably David Beckham, news travels slowly, and the BBC. And at a time when the country is, reaching out to the world in a new Brexit world, the idea that any UK PLC will be sensible to do anything to harm such a positive brand.
So what can be done then? Because here you are acknowledging that parts of the news service, at least, have lacked impartiality. At the very least, you acknowledge that. You were previously within the news organisation at the BBC. What can be done to stop it?
I tell you what we shouldn't do, what the BBC shouldn't do is do nothing. I think it definitely needs reform. I would say two things. One is to get on the front foot on impartiality, and it isn't just about news. It is about drama. I think drama and comedy, these areas where you mentioned woke, it's woke gone mad, quite extraordinary. And we talk about diversity, diversity of having more women involved and ethnic minorities, people from a disabled background. That's all great because you want to make sure that your staff and your programme reflects the country that pays. But there's also diversity of opinion. And it's amazing that you get a groupthink, as what referred to on today's programme, is that, there's this terrible sort of anecdote. It says, of people saying, I don't know anybody that voted Leave. Well, don't hold your hands up with pride. That's embarrassing. That shows. So I would say a massive programme of impartiality across the whole BBC where you prioritise impartiality. And the second thing is this is in terms of the licence fee, I think you do need a universal licence fee, but it doesn't have to be the current format. And you could say, have a new way of raising it, and then on top of which the BBC could have some additional services where the public paid for. And that might be one long-term solution. But I think the country would regret getting rid of the universality of the licence fee.
What about Channel 4? Because this is another massive bugbear of mine. I can see
I share your bugbear.
absolutely no reason why the government should not privatise Channel 4. Not only is it a commercially funded broadcaster, it is also incredibly biased. And there is proof in this case that Channel 4 News is biased.
Oh, it's quite extraordinary. I mean, I find it amazing that that Ofcom is not flooded with complaints about Channel 4 News. The BBC, ITV, ITN, and Channel 4 are covered by the same rules of Ofcom accuracy and impartiality, but they don't seem to apply it in the same way. And I think, but what I would say about privatisation, which I frankly think is the right thing to do, it won't deal with the bias issue. It's a completely separate issue. If you look at in America, when they have big private news networks, and actually, some of the channels in the UK that are private, they're as biased or more biased than the BBC. So I think it's a totally separate issue about impartiality. That is about a decision taken by managers and correspondents and presenters to put impartiality as the number one, if that's what they want to do.
But I guess it feels particularly wrong when you are talking about government-owned broadcasters. Because here's the thing, Robbie, I would love the impartiality rules to be scrapped altogether. Now, I know that would fill you with absolute dread, but I say let's go to an American system where people can openly express their opinions on air. Even John Sopel, the BBC's American correspondent for many, many years, who's now doing this podcast on the US election, says he would like the impartiality rules scrapped. But I think for government-owned broadcasters, it's absolutely critical that they are impartial, and that's why I have such issues with Channel 4.
Just to say, I think there is a difference between the news bulletin on here that I listen to seems very impartial, very different to you and your hosting. It's a very different type of format.
And the point is, we have guests that come on and share all different sorts of opinions. Yes. But for me, as a human being, you can read what my opinions are in The Sun, so the listeners know where I stand, and I'm happy to have guests on from all over the spectrum. The reality is, with Jon Snow, the host of Channel 4 News, who says terrible words about Boris Johnson in private, but then in public will try and act like he is impartial. I think that's where the issue is. Look, just finally, Sir Robbie Gibb, Theresa May, what do you think her legacy will be? Obviously, you worked for her for so many years, and do you feel like the media were never prepared to give your former boss a fair shot?
In terms of legacy, and I think friend and foe would say she's a Prime Minister of phenomenal integrity, putting the country before any personal issues. I think, she was the longest-serving female Prime Minister, the second longest-serving female Home Secretary, longest-serving Home Secretary, and the second female Prime Minister. I don't blame the media on it. I mean, the basic problem for the government was delivering Brexit and trying to deliver Brexit in a hung parliament. You had the Labour Party playing games, claiming that they wanted to respect the referendum and doing everything they can. I think they voted against Brexit on 38 occasions. And you had a group of Conservative MPs who were doing everything they could to stop Brexit, who then eventually went and joined a new party, and another group that wanted a particular type of it. It was an impossible setup. I think the media were reporting the reality that it was very, very hard. But, I think she did a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of delivering Brexit. And now we've done it, I'm delighted.
And of course, she was there in the House today. So she's still there. She didn't cut and run like many former Prime Ministers do. A little bit of an update on our poll, Sir Robbie Gibb. 81% of people now say.
Okay, so if I was at the BBC, I'd say this would not be appropriate because it's not a random sample. You never put on the BBC.
I'm not claiming this is a scientific poll, that's for sure. So Robbie Gibb, former head of BBC Westminster and former director of communications at number 10 Downing Street under Theresa May. Thank you so much for being here.